And a very good morning to you. For those of you that are going to be watching, probably most of this will be watched on a rebroadcast on one of the social media platforms that we have, and possibly even on the website. We're going to see if we can get all of this up there. I wanted to talk to you for a moment, and this is going to be one of a few broadcasts that we're going to be doing over this probably next few weeks and things on speech writing, on public speaking, on storytelling, how the connection of sermons and all of that. One of the things that people know is that I do communications consulting, and which involves sometimes speech writing, sometimes helping somebody prepare a speech, and sometimes just advising them on how to get their message out. One of the things that I have seen recently that is sort of becoming a pet peeve, so I don't want this to become a rant because I don't want to be very critical of a lot of people, but there seem to be people who are out there that are writers that write speeches, but then they decide that they're going to coach the person that's going to be delivering the speech. Now, I hear speech writing gurus tell you that you should also coach your speaker. There is no doubt about that. The problem is that only about half of the speech is writing. In fact, it may, the verbiage is good, but remember that the speech delivery is something that is done in the moment. There are gestures, there is voice inflection, there is how they read it, how often they look at the audience, whether they have actually taken the speech and it's become part of them. There's nothing worse than having a speaker that is droning on, reading something that somebody else has written for them, and they just have to get through this speech. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to listen to that. And I know that we are subjected to that a lot of times with government, some corporate communications and things, and so you can have that. One of the things that I think has become an issue is I'm not really sure how a speechwriter or a person who calls himself a speechwriter will try to coach somebody on the delivery when they've never delivered a speech themselves, when they rarely give one. I actually talk to speechwriters who say, no, I'm an introvert, I'm terrified of doing a speech. If you're terrified of actually giving a speech, how on God's green earth are you ever going to be able to coach somebody to give the speech appropriately? I hear people say, I want to go into speech writing and speech coaching. Okay, if you're a good writer, you may be able to write the part, but if you have no idea how this is delivered, it's a totally different medium of communication. You may be a good writer on writing prose. Maybe you can do copywriting. And copywriting is a little bit closer to speech writing. But in the end, a speech is to be delivered with your mouth. It is auditory, it is visual, it is something that's going to be given in the moment. And unless you are comfortable, at least comfortable giving speeches yourself, be careful about trying to coach someone. I know somebody out there is going to say, well, Bob, there are a lot of coaches that coach football teams that have never actually played football. I agree with you. There's a lot of head coaches that have done that. There are a few, not a lot, but there are a few. The thing is that they often have specialized people that they have hired who have played that game, who have been able to do that, and they're good at giving the advice part. And that's why I'm saying, if you're a speechwriter and you don't give speeches, don't try to coach your speaker. Just don't. Find somebody else to do that. Tell them, listen, you have to have the speech coaching, but I've never done this. Or I don't do this that often, or I'm not as comfortable there. You will do a grave disservice to your speaker if you cannot coach them and coach them appropriately. One of the things that I had said some time ago is that I think that for every one speech that you write, if you're a speechwriter, that you ought for every 10, I should say, excuse me, let me back up. For every 10 speeches that you write, you ought to be giving one yourself. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a paid speech. Maybe you're going to be giving it at a Rotary Club, a Kiwanis Club, maybe you're going to give it before a church gathering or something like that. Volunteer to do it, because it's very interesting to see how the words play out on paper. By the way, if you're somebody who has to give speeches on a regular basis, it is really important to make sure that you work on the delivery too. It was interesting. Recently, I was having a conversation with someone about, do you rehearse? Do I rehearse? Especially when I have to speak weekly to the same group at a church. I get to practice this every week. It's always interesting too, having to deliver a different talk every week to the same group and keep them interested. That's why when people go, well, I don't understand the connection between giving a sermon and speech writing. Really? Because I got to do a different speech every week. Some motivational speakers, I find it interesting, actually get to give the same speech over and over and over again. And boy, the more that you give it, the more that you can gauge reaction and change timing and all of that. That's why the rehearsal part and the delivery part is so important. It is so important to get that down, to make sure that you're rehearsing. And if you don't have a speech coach to help you, take a video camera like I'm doing right now. Take your phone. Video yourself giving it. Watch it. I was listening recently to Andy Stanley, and he was talking about how he goes about preparing his talks. And one of the things he does every week, he's a guy that pastors a mega church and is a great communicator and written a book on communication called Communicate for Change. I'd recommend it to you. Andy actually goes back and watches all of his videos of his sermons to figure out what he did right, what he did wrong, and what he needs to do differently. Here's a guy that's experienced at speaking to thousands of people that reviews what he does. He also rehearses in his own way. He'll be driving down the street and rehearse stories out loud. I do the same thing. You always need to be rehearsing. And again, if you're a speechwriter and you're writing speeches, please, whatever you do, don't give advice on how to give the speech if you don't give speeches yourself or you've never given a speech yourself. And so just my little semi-rant today, for those people that are calling themselves speech writers and speech coaches, if you're a speech writer, write the speeches. If you're a speech coach. If you can do both because you've done both, then go for it. If not, leave the delivery coaching to other people who know what they're doing and who have been doing it for some time. If you want to get into that, start giving speeches regularly. Do what Andy Stanley does. Record yourself, watch yourself, constantly seek to improve, and we'll see you soon. Any communication questions, you can send them in to us on our various social media platforms, and we will see you soon. Take care.